physics, messengers of nuclear reactions in stars. If a civilization wanted to send a message that could cross galaxies without obstruction, it might choose neutrinos. They are subtle, they are everywhere, and they are nearly impossible to block. But to detect them requires immense effort. Great detectors buried deep underground, watching for the rarest flicker of interaction. You pause with this. To send whispers through neutrinos is to trust that listeners will one day learn patience enough to hear. It is a kind of quiet faith in future attention. You reflect also on mathematics. Numbers themselves can be a whisper. Patterns of primes. Sequences that repeat not by accident, but by design. Mathematics is not language bound to one species. It is the logic of the universe, the rhythm of order itself. If the first intelligence wished to speak softly, perhaps it chose mathematics as its medium, embedding patterns into signals subtle enough to be overlooked by those who are not searching. You linger on this thought. Patterns are everywhere. In the spiral of galaxies, in the shells of mollusks, in the rings of trees. To live in the universe is to live surrounded by patterns. The challenge is not to find them, but to recognize when a pattern is natural and when it is intentional. And so you rest with the possibility. Perhaps the universe is already alive with whispers, messages carried in quiet mathematics, encoded in waves you have not yet learned to translate. You breathe slowly, allowing the idea to soften. The first intelligence may not have chosen to shout across the stars. Shouting consumes energy. Shouting risks detection by forces not friendly. Shouting assumes that others are listening with the right tools. But whispering is different. Whispering is patient. Whispering is subtle. Whispering trusts that those who care enough to listen deeply will one day notice. You consider the patience of such a choice. A whisper sent across light years may not be answered for millennia. A message embedded in neutrinos or mathematics may remain unnoticed for ages, yet still it travels, still it waits. You reflect on how easily humans overlook whispers even on Earth. Species communicate all around you in sense, in vibrations, in magnetic fields. Plants release signals into soil. Whales call across oceans. Insects flicker with light. To miss these is not because they are absent, but because you are not tuned to their language. Perhaps the same is true of the stars. Perhaps the first intelligence still speaks, but in a language you have not yet learned. You pause here, letting the idea hum quietly in you. To not know how to listen is not failure. It is only a stage of growth. Children must first learn to hear before they understand. Civilizations, too, must learn to listen in new ways. What feels like silence now may one day be revealed as fullness. You rest in the mystery of this. Silence as potential. Silence as hidden communication. Silence as whisper. The question lingers gently. If the first intelligence is whispering still, would you recognize its voice, or would it blend into the fabric of the universe, unnoticed, unacknowledged, yet always present? You do not need the answer tonight. The thought itself is enough to cradle you, to feel that silence may not be empty, but filled with whispers too soft for now. You breathe slowly, feeling your body sink, feeling your mind stretch outward. You listen, not with ears, not with instruments, but with imagination. You listen as though silence itself may be carrying a message meant for you. And in that listening, you realize that wonder itself is a kind of reply. To wonder is to participate in the conversation. Even if you do not yet know the words, you begin with a quiet reflection. Your body is written, not written in ink, not written in sound, but written in code. A code older than your species, older than your planet, older, perhaps, than the oceans themselves. It is the language of DNA, the spiral of molecules that carries instructions for life. You rest in this awareness. Everything alive carries this code. From the smallest bacterium to the tallest tree, from the beating of your heart to the shimmering wings of insects, all of it unfolds from patterns of nucleotides, for letters repeating in endless variations. Life is a story told in molecules, and stories can carry echoes. You let yourself drift into the possibility that DNA might hold more than survival instructions. It may hold memory, not memory as you understand it, not images, not words, but memory of origins, echoes of where life came from and how it spread, perhaps even echoes of a touch older than Earth. You reflect on the idea of panspermia, the thought that life may not have begun here at all. Instead, it may have arrived, seeded by comets, carried on fragments of rock between worlds, scattered, like spores across the galaxy. Microbes frozen into stone, protected against radiation, drifting through the dark until they found a new home. In this way, life could be older than Earth itself, passed along like a torch across planets and systems. You rest with this. Your DNA may not be entirely local. Its roots may stretch beyond your sky, its seeds sown from stars, and then another possibility unfolds. If life can travel by chance, it can also travel by design. Perhaps the first intelligence, wherever it arose, chose to send life forward, embedding messages not in machines, but in biology itself. What better vessel than DNA? It copies itself, it adapts, it persists. It carries information faithfully across generations, across eons. It is both resilient and mutable, stable enough to survive, flexible enough to evolve. If you wanted to leave a message for the future, for civilizations not yet born, what medium could outlast stone, outlast metal, outlast machines? Perhaps the only medium is life itself. You linger here in the poetry of the thought. DNA as letter, DNA as memory, DNA as whisper sent forward in time. You drift into the science of it. Your genome is vast, billions of base pairs arranged in sequences. Most of it does not code for proteins directly. Much of it seems silent, repeating, or broken. Yet silence is not emptiness. Some believe this junk DNA carries hidden roles, subtle influences. Others suggest it is simply the residue of history, fragments of ancient viruses, relics of evolutionary experiments. But within that silence could hide something more. A civilization could, in theory, encode patterns into DNA prime numbers, mathematical constants, sequences that could not have arisen naturally. If such a message existed, it would not be obvious. It would be buried, like a fossil in stone, waiting for those with patience to read it. You pause with this, not as certainty, but as possibility. The poetry of it soothes you, that life itself may be a vessel carrying not only itself, but intention. You reflect on relics already known. Within your genome are remnants of viruses long extinct, fragments of ancient infections that wrote themselves into your code and stayed. More than 8% of human DNA is viral in origin. They are ghosts of encounters across deep time, carried in every cell. If viruses can leave messages in you, why not civilizations? You let the thought expand gently. Perhaps the first intelligence knew it would not last. Perhaps it wished to be remembered, not with monuments of stone or steel, but with messages that could endure for billions of years. And so, it placed its whispers into biology, scattering life across the stars. Each seed would grow, adapt, evolve, and when intelligence arose again, it might discover that it had always carried within itself an echo of those who came before. You breathe slowly. You feel your body as living evidence, cells, molecules, DNA spiraling within you. Every part of you is written with history older than you. Every heartbeat is guided by instructions billions of years in the making. You realize, even without messages from civilizations, DNA itself is already a record. It remembers through structure. The double helix itself is a fossil of possibility, the most enduring code, you know. You pause to let that truth settle. Life is its own message, and yet the question remains, could the first intelligence have touched you through this code? Could their echoes exist in your DNA, faint but persistent? If so, then life on Earth is not only local, but cosmic. You are not only human, not only earthborn, but part of a story much larger. You rest in that possibility. It is not a story of proof, but of wonder. You do not need certainty tonight. You need only the slow unfolding of thought, the awareness that your very body is a kind of library, and that some of its shelves may still hold secrets. You drift now into the poetry of evolution. DNA copies itself with each generation. It is not perfect. Mistakes occur. Some vanish, others persist. Over time, these changes become adaptation, and adaptation becomes new forms of life. What began as simple molecules has branched into forests, oceans, and mines. All of it written in the same 4 letters, recombined endlessly. Like music written from the same notes, you reflect on how beautiful it is that such simplicity creates such richness. For letters, infinite songs, and you wonder, softly, if someone long ago composed the first phrase. You breathe deeply. The rhythm of thought is slow, gentle. If DNA carries echoes, they are not loud. They do not shout across space. They whisper inside every living thing. To listen is not to build telescopes, but to look within, to read the spirals of your own cells. Perhaps the greatest messages are not out there, but already inside you. You close your eyes to this realization. Your body is not separate from the cosmos. It is its continuation. The atoms in your cells are starborn. The code in your DNA may be universe-born. You are not simply in the universe. You are of it. You are of it. And as you rest in this truth, you wonder, if life itself is a message, what happens when civilizations fall asleep? When they no longer write in stars, but in the memory of survival? Does life itself continue the story, carrying intelligence forward into the future, waiting to awaken again? You do not know. You do not need to know. You only need to feel the calm of possibility, the gentle awareness that you are both reader and message, both questioner and answer, both echo and voice. You begin with the thought of sleep, not the light sleep of a single night, but a deeper one, the kind that lasts through seasons, through centuries, through eons. Sleep as survival, sleep as patience, sleep as endurance against what cannot yet be faced. Life on Earth already knows this kind of rest. Seeds lie dormant in soil for years, waiting for rain. Insects bury themselves in cocoons, waiting for warmth. Bears retreat into caves, slowing their bodies until spring returns. Even cells can fold themselves into spores, shutting down almost entirely, yet keeping the spark of life intact. If life can sleep, perhaps civilizations can too. You drift into this possibility with slow breath. Perhaps the first intelligence still exists, not vanished, not extinct, but resting, hibernating beneath time, waiting for conditions to change. There are reasons for such a long sleep. Stars brighten as they age. Worlds may become too hot, too cold, too unstable. A civilization might survive longer by slowing itself, retreating into dormancy until conditions improve. It might wait for its star to calm, or for new stars to form, or for galaxies to drift into different shapes. Against cosmic time, even patience must grow cosmic. You reflect on what dormancy would mean. A civilization might place itself in suspension, preserving knowledge, bodies, or minds in ways that do not require constant activity. Machines might carry the seed of its return, frozen vaults of memory, coded in light, in matter, in biology. Not gone, only paused. Not extinct, only waiting. You linger on the possibility that such sleepers may still be here, not in your skies, but hidden, resting beneath ice, beneath rock, beneath time itself. Quiet, invisible, but present. You let the thoughts soften you. Silence may not mean absence. Silence may mean sleep. On Earth, even frozen microbes have awakened after tens of thousands of years in ice. Seeds, thousands of years old, have sprouted when given warmth and water. Life, once dormant, remembers how to live again. Perhaps civilizations are the same. Perhaps the first intelligence lies dormant, waiting in frozen patience for the right moment to awaken. You breathe into this thought. It is not frightening, it is calming. Sleep is not death, it is restoration. It is a bridge between one time and another. You imagine, gently, that civilizations may have chosen this path, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. To last longer, one must sometimes rest. To endure beyond the fragility of planets and stars, one must learn the art of cosmic hibernation. And so, silence is not final. It may simply be intermission. You pause with this, letting it echo inside you. Perhaps, even now, the first intelligence rests, its memory intact, its presence preserved, hidden, in the deep places of the universe. Perhaps it will awaken again, not tomorrow, not next century, but in millions of years, when conditions are right. Time does not rush. Time allows patience. You let this awareness cradle you. Civilizations may not burn forever. They may flicker, then pause. But in pause, there is hope. In pause, there is waiting. In pause, there is survival stretched across scales you cannot yet measure. And so, silence itself may be alive with sleepers. The quiet may not be emptiness, but slumber. The stillness may not be absence, but rest. You breathe slowly, deeply. The long sleep of civilizations is not something you must prove. It is only something you may hold as possibility. And in holding it, you feel less alone. For if silence is sleep, then the universe is not barren. It is dreaming. You begin with a quiet recognition. When you look outward, you are also looking inward. The stars draw your eyes, but the thoughts they stir turn gently back toward you. Each search for life beyond Earth becomes, in its own way, a search for your own meaning. Each possibility you imagine for another civilization becomes a reflection of what you value most deeply about your own. You drift into the awareness that the cosmos is both a mystery and a mirror. When you ask what others might be like, what they might think, how they might live, how they might endure, you are also asking what it means for you to think, to live, to endure. In the vastness of silence, the possibility of the other shapes your understanding of yourself. Perhaps intelligence is not defined only by the ability to build, or to expand, or to harness energy. Perhaps it is also defined by reflection, the ability to see one's own fragility and hope reflected in imagined others, even when those others may never appear. You breathe slowly into this thought when you consider the first intelligence. If it existed long before you, or if it waits in silence still, you cannot help but project onto it your own longings. Did they also ask questions? Did they feel curiosity rise within them the way it rises in you now? Did they wonder whether they were alone the way you wonder now? And so the search for them becomes tangled with the search for yourself. Science shows you glimpses of what they might be like, not by describing their features, but by reminding you of your own. To imagine others, you first return to Earth. You consider what intelligence means here. Dolphins weaving songs through water, crows shaping tools from twigs, octopuses solving puzzles with curious arms. These lives are not human, yet in their cleverness, you see reflections of your own beginnings. The mirror widens. Perhaps life elsewhere does not need to be human to remind you of yourself. Every signal you hope to find in the stars is a reflection of the signals you already send. Your radio waves leak into the cosmos. Your spacecraft drift outward with golden records attached. Even silence becomes a message. And if you imagine listening to others, you must imagine them listening to you. The act of search becomes an act of self-revelation. You pause and let the thought unfold gently. What you most hope to find in others reveals what you most wish to preserve in yourself. Some imagine distant civilizations as vast and powerful, sculpting galaxies like clay. Others imagine them as fragile and fleeting, struggling against their own limits. Both are mirrors, for in imagining their grandeur, you reveal your own longing for endurance. In imagining their fragility, you reveal your awareness of your own. The mirror deepens. Even the silence itself becomes reflection. For when you ask why the stars do not answer, you confront your own quiet future. Perhaps civilizations vanish. Perhaps they fade before they can speak. Perhaps survival is harder than you wish to admit. In silence, you see your own vulnerability. And yet, the mirror is not only somber, it is tender, for in searching for others, you also reveal your own hope. You would not ask if life exists elsewhere unless you wanted it to. You would not imagine their songs unless you hoped one day to sing together. The longing itself is a mirror of your capacity for connection. You let this soften you. Intelligence, at its heart, may not be about domination. It may not be about conquest or expansion. It may be about reflection, about recognizing oneself in another. If the first intelligence ever existed, you wonder if they too reached this stage. Did they look outward and see themselves reflected back? Did they measure their existence against the silence and feel the weight of their own fragility? Did they, perhaps, dream of others as you do now? You breathe slowly, letting the possibility cradle you. In this way, the universe becomes intimate. It is not distant, not unreachable, but tender. In the way it reflects you back to yourself. Each star is a question. Each question is a mirror. Even your tools of science reflect this truth. Telescopes show you distant galaxies, but in their mirrors, you also see your own face, your own curiosity pressed close to the lens. Equations describe planetary orbits, yet in the elegance of their patterns, you glimpse the workings of your own mind. In the act of discovery, you discover yourself. You drift deeper into this awareness. Perhaps the purpose of the search is not only to find others, but to learn how to live with yourself. For in imagining them, you refine what you value most. If you picture them living peacefully, it is because you desire peace. If you picture them enduring, it is because you wish for endurance. If you picture them reaching for the stars, it is because you too reach. You pause again, letting this truth settle like gentle mist. The search for them is inseparable from the search for yourself, and in that way, you are never alone. Even if no other voice ever calls back from the cosmos, you carry them with you in reflection. You imagine their fragility, their hope, their wonder, and in doing so, you discover your own. This is the intimacy of shared wonder. It is the tenderness of recognizing that, even without contact, you are already in conversation with yourself, with your species, with life itself. You breathe deeply, slowly. Resting in this thought, the cosmos does not answer quickly. Its silence is long, its distance is immense. But within that silence, you find reflection. Within that waiting, you find meaning. Perhaps then, the first intelligence is less a mystery to solve than a mirror to hold. Perhaps their greatest gift to you is not proof of their existence, but the way their possibility shapes your own, and so softly, you rest in the awareness that the universe, vast and ancient, is also a mirror. In its endless depth, it reflects you. In your longing for them, it reveals you. In your wonder, it whispers that you are both seeker and reflection, both question and answer. You breathe once more, slowly, gently, and let yourself drift into that stillness. You arrive, at last, in the quietest place of all, the stillness after the asking. Every thought, every search, every theory has led you here, to the soft edge of uncertainty. You have followed whispers through radio waves, traced memories through DNA, wandered through reflections in the stars. And now, what remains is not an answer, but a question. You breathe into this silence, for as vast as the universe is, its greatest offering may not be revelation, but wonder. You do not yet know if the first intelligence ever lived, if it still endures, if it drifts somewhere far beyond your sight. You do not yet know if your signals will ever find an echo. But even in not knowing, there is beauty. The question itself glows like a lantern. You let yourself rest in the thought that asking may be as important as finding. The search is not wasted simply because it is unfinished. In each step you take toward the unknown, you become more aware of the delicate, brief moment of life you inhabit. The universe reflects your questions back, and in their light, you learn what it means to wonder. You linger on the idea that perhaps intelligence, at its deepest, is not about answers at all. It is about curiosity, the reaching, the leaning, the stretching beyond what is given. Every mind that has ever asked, "Are we alone?" has shared in that same gesture. Every civilization that ever looked upward has carried the same quiet longing. You are part of a lineage of questions, and so you drift deeper into the awareness that your uncertainty connects you to everything, for the silence that surrounds you now may be the same silence that once surrounded others. If the first intelligence looked outward, they too may have wondered if they were the first. They too may have asked if someone else had already passed through the night before them. Perhaps all civilizations, no matter how different, are joined by this single thread, the act of asking. You let the thought soften within you. Silence is not absence. It is a space wide enough to hold possibility. It does not erase what might be, it only cradles it in stillness. The silence between stars does not mean nothing lives there. It only means that life, if it exists, has not yet touched your ears, and so the question remains. You let it remain. You do not force it to resolve. You do not rush to fill it. Instead, you treat it like a horizon, something you move toward but never need to reach. The horizon gives direction without end. The question gives wonder without conclusion. Science, in its gentlest truth, has always lived in such horizons. Each answer uncovers more questions. Each discovery deepens the mystery. When you learn that stars are born from collapsing clouds, you then ask where the clouds came from. When you learn that life blooms from chemistry, you then ask why chemistry allows it. When you learn how galaxies move, you then ask what lies beyond them. Answers unfold, but questions remain. And in those questions, your mind continues to stretch. The first intelligence, if it ever was, may have stretched in the same way. They may have stood on their world, beneath their sky, and let their thoughts drift toward the unknown. They may have asked, is there more? They may have paused, as you do now, between what is known and what is not. Perhaps they too rested. In the beauty of asking, you breathe gently, slowly, letting this kinship cradle you. For to ask is to reach across time. To ask is to send a hand into the darkness, not knowing if it will ever be met. To ask is to admit both your limits and your longing, and in that admission there is a quiet grace. The question that remains is not a failure. It is a gift. It is what keeps you moving, what keeps you searching, what keeps you wondering. Without it, you would fall silent. With it, you remain alive to the mystery. You let this truth settle like calm water. Perhaps the silence you hear is itself an answer. Not a definitive one, not one that closes the story, but one that opens it wider. Silence says, there is still more to ask. Silence says, the horizon is not yet reached. Silence says, your curiosity matters. And so you rest here, in the final fold of thought, where questions breathe more softly than answers ever could. You close your eyes to the image of stars scattered through the dark, each one holding secrets, each one holding possibilities. Somewhere among them, perhaps, the first intelligence once asked the same question. Somewhere among them, perhaps, others are asking still. And you, here and now, are part of that endless chorus. You do not need certainty to belong. You belong in the act of wondering. You belong in the beauty of not knowing. You belong in the space where the question lingers. You take one last slow breath at the end of all these chapters. What remains is not a conclusion, but an opening. The silence is not an ending, but a doorway. And as you rest, you feel yourself crossing it, not into answers, but into the vastness of the question itself. The question arrives like a ripple. Could the first intelligent life still be out there? It is not a new question. It is older than you, older than your species, older perhaps than stars themselves. It is the question of awareness, asking about awareness, a mirror turned toward infinity. When you let it rest inside you, it feels vast and heavy, yet gentle, like holding a smooth stone polished by oceans of time. Your mind drifts backward into the story of beginnings. Not just your own beginnings, but the beginnings of all things. The universe is nearly 14 billion years old. That number is so large that it cannot be grasped all at once. To hold it, you must break it into pieces. If the entire history of the universe were compressed into a single year, Galaxies would bloom in the first weeks, stars would ignite in midsummer, and Earth itself would not appear until the autumn leaves began to fall. In this grand calendar, humans, all of human history, would arrive only in the final seconds of December's final night. And so, you see, intelligence, at least as you know it, is young. But the cosmos is not young. It has had time enough for countless stories. And if intelligence arose here, why not elsewhere? And why not before? The thought settles like dew on grass. You hold it without rushing. You reflect on what intelligence is. At its core, intelligence is the ability to notice patterns and respond to them. A bird choosing the strongest branch, a fish remembering the path of the current, a human arranging words into meaning. It is not something sudden, not something that begins with a flash, but something that grows slowly, layer upon layer, like the rings of a tree. And if it grew here, it might have grown there. Across the universe, countless worlds orbit, countless stars. Some are young, some are old, some are still forming. Each one carries the possibility of chemistry, and within chemistry, the possibility of life. The conditions for life are not magical. They are patterns of matter and energy arranged in certain ways. And patterns repeat. Could another world have held those patterns before Earth ever cooled? Could life have begun there earlier, bloomed faster, and risen into intelligence long before you were here to wonder about it? The thought deepens. You think of the stars themselves. The first stars were not like the ones you see in your sky. They were massive, bright, and short-lived. They lived quickly and died violently, scattering heavy elements into the dark carbon, oxygen, iron. Without those deaths, there could be no Earth, no bodies, no breath. The universe needed time to create. The ingredients of life. It needed generations of stars. And yet, those generations came early. By the time Earth was young, the galaxy already carried the materials for countless worlds like it. The ingredients of life existed long before you. Perhaps the recipe was followed more than once. Perhaps it was followed first elsewhere. You breathe into that possibility, slowly. If the first intelligence was not here, then where? Perhaps it was born around a small red star. Red dwarfs are the quiet keepers of time. They burn for trillions of years, far longer than the sun. Around them, planets have stability, and stability is the cradle in which life can take its time. If life began early on such a world, it could still be there now, older than humanity can even imagine. Or perhaps intelligence began in places less stable, under brighter, hotter suns, where life had to grow quickly before the star burned out. Perhaps civilizations bloomed and withered in cycles, each one brief but luminous, like sparks in dry grass. The question remains, if they were first, where are they now? You sit with the paradox. The universe is vast, and in its vastness, time flows in rivers deeper than oceans. If intelligence arose long ago, it may have already passed. Civilizations may have risen, flourished, and fallen into silence, their traces swallowed by distance and time. 1 billion years is enough to erase nearly everything. Even on Earth, the traces of your earliest ancestors are fragile. Fossils are rare, artifacts rarer still. What survives of you after only a few thousand years is thin and scattered. What survives after millions, after billions? Almost nothing. Perhaps the first intelligence is gone, as though it never was. But perhaps not. Perhaps it is still there, holding its silence, just as you hold yours now. Perhaps it waits on the other side of light years, beyond your reach, but not beyond existence. The possibility lingers, neither provable nor deniable, like a note suspended in music. You notice how your body responds to this thought. Your breath slows. Your mind stretches outward, filling with the scale of time, the enormity of distance. The question does not demand an answer. It asks only to be felt. To feel it is to rest inside the oldest wonder. You are not the first. You are not the last. You are part of a story still unfolding. You drift into reflections of yourself. Intelligence is a mirror. To ask whether the first still exists is also to ask about your own existence, your own survival. If they were first, did they last? If they could last, could you? The edges blur. You are both the questioner and the question you. Think of silence again, but now you see it differently. Silence is not emptiness, it is possibility. In silence, anything might still be waiting. In silence, the first intelligence might still breathe, or its memory might still hum, hidden in the starlight, written into the chemistry of distant worlds. Your eyes close softly. The silence cradles you. The question remains, older than stars, older than speech, older even than memory, and still unanswered, still unfolding, still stretching across the dark. You drift on a thought. Life is not enough on its own, it can fill oceans, crawl across continents, breathe beneath skies. It can spread, endure, adapt, and change. Yet for life to become a mind, to look back at itself, to wonder about the stars, to ask questions, something more must unfold. Not just survival, not just growth, but reflection. Intelligence is not a sudden gift. It is a long weaving, drawn from threads of time. You feel that slowness now, as if your own thoughts carry the echo of billions of years. A single mind, anywhere in the universe, must be the product of patience stretched beyond measure. You rest. With the beginning dot at first, there is only chemistry. Molecules drifting, colliding, breaking apart, recombining. Most of it is chaos, but sometimes structure holds, patterns form, they repeat. They make copies of themselves. In those copies, tiny variations arise, and with those variations, selection begins its quiet work. Life is born not from miracle, but from persistence, from repetition, from the endless testing of possibilities. And once life is there, intelligence waits at the far end of its long road. You trace that road in your thoughts. The first forms of life had no need for thought. A bacterium is already successful without it, carrying chemistry inside a fragile boundary, using energy, reproducing, thriving in simplicity. For billions of years, Earth was only this, a planet. Of the small, the microscopic, the unseen. Yet in their smallness, they shaped everything. The air, the oceans, the soil beneath later feet. They laid the ground for minds they could never imagine. Intelligence cannot rush. It requires complexity, and complexity takes time. You pause here, letting the vastness of that time settle in. Billions of years, more than you can hold in imagination, more than you can count in lifetimes. Yet every heartbeat you feel now is built on that patience. You turn toward the next step. To sense the world is the beginning of mind. To notice what is outside and to respond in ways more flexible than instinct. Eyes, or the beginnings of eyes, open on the ancient earth. Not the eyes, you know, but patches of light-sensitive cells. Enough to tell day from night, shadow from glow. Slowly, over generations beyond measure, those patches sharpen. They curve, focus, refine. until light itself becomes information, until shape and motion can be seen. With sight comes possibility. With hearing, with touch, with smell, with taste, the body becomes a receiver of the universe. And with reception must come processing. Here, neurons enter the story. Tiny sparks traveling between cells, carrying signals faster than chemistry. Alone, at first a few connections, then webs of them, then networks so intricate they resemble constellations, glittering with activity. The birth of a nervous system is the quiet architecture of mind. You let this image grow inside you, a net of signals, shimmering. Each connection alone is small, but together they form patterns. They allow not only reaction, but choice, not only survival, but learning. And learning is the soil where thought can someday take root. You reflect on how gradual this must have been. No single moment divides non-mind from mind. It is a continuum, a slow layering. One species develops memory, another learns to imitate, another recognizes its reflection in water. Each step is small, each step is fragile. But across the ocean of time they accumulate into something greater. Intelligence is not a straight line. It is a branching tree, full of experiments. Many paths end, many branches break. Some species grow in remarkable ways and then vanish forever. The story of minds is not only about success, but about loss. Extinctions carve silence where possibilities once stood. And yet, something persists. You hold the thought of communication. To communicate is to reach beyond yourself, to place what is inside into the space between. Sounds, gestures, signals, markings. Communication deepens intelligence because it connects one mind to another. A solitary mind can think, but a connected mind can grow. Each shared pattern adds to a pool larger than one life alone. On Earth, communication became language, first in simple cries and warnings, then in symbols, and later in words that could carry abstractions, memories, dreams. With language, the mind expands beyond the present moment. It can carry the past, imagine the future, and even ask questions that may never be answered. This too must have taken patience. Language is not born whole. It grows, shifts, evolves. Each syllable is like a grain of sand carried by generations, building dunes of meaning across time. You wonder if the first intelligence elsewhere would follow the same path. Would its mind, too, have required senses? Would it have woven neurons, or something like them, into networks of thought? Would it have spoken, or sung, or pulsed signals through light or touch? However alien it might seem, the roots would still be in the same soil. The need to notice, to remember, to share. You rest in the recognition that minds are emergent. They arise not because the universe commands it, but because conditions allow it. Life begins, complexity builds, senses unfold, neurons fire. Communication deepens, until, at last, a threshold is crossed. A being looks at the stars and wonders. That moment, whenever and wherever it occurred, is the true birth of mind. You feel the stillness of it, a gaze lifted upward, a question forming, a spark of curiosity that turns survival into awareness, that transforms living into reflecting. That moment may have happened here on Earth, or it may have happened long before on some other world. Either way, it is the turning point, and from it, the universe is never the same, because once a mind asks a question, silence is no longer only silence. It is mystery, it is invitation, it is possibility, You let that thought linger, soft and slow. The patience of billions of years folds into the immediacy of your own awareness. The long story of life condenses into your single breath. You carry it with you now. The story of how matter became memory, how chemistry became reflection, and you return to the question that hovers gently above. Could the first mind still be out there? If it was born before you, if it had patience longer than yours, could it still be watching the same stars, still listening to the same silence? The thought stretches out, unresolved. You drift with it, letting your breath slow, letting your body sink into stillness. You do not need the answer. The question itself is enough to cradle you. For intelligence is not just discovery, it is wonder, and wonder never ends. You rest in the thought of impermanence. Everything that begins carries the possibility of ending. You feel this in your own breath, the rise and fall, the rhythm of presence followed by pause. Life too carries this rhythm. Species appear, flourish, and fade. Even civilizations with their knowledge, their structures, their dreams rest on fragile ground. The universe does not promise permanence. It offers only the chance to exist for a time. Extinction shadows every spark. You think of Earth's history, a long record written not only in fossils, but in silences. 5 great mass extinctions punctuate its story. Each one cleared away much of what had lived, opening space for something new. The Ordovician seas emptied, the Permian land burned and suffocated. The Cretaceous skies fell dark with impact, and yet, after each silence, life returned. Not the same life, not the same forms, but something different. Survival was always fragile, always uncertain. You hold this in your thoughts. Most species that ever lived are gone. 99 out of every 100 are no longer here. Survival is the exception, not the rule. And so, when you wonder about intelligence, you feel the same fragility. A civilization may rise, but what keeps it alive? What shields it from the silence that waits around every corner? You reflect on the dangers. Some are external, written in the cosmos itself. Asteroids and comets wander through space, reminders of the collision that ended the age of the dinosaurs. A single rock, striking at the wrong moment, can undo millions of years of progress. Stars, too, can betray. A sun can flare with violent storms, stripping atmospheres from planets. Or it can simply age, growing hotter, less stable, until its warmth turns deadly. Planets shift beneath their own weight. Volcanoes, earthquakes, ice ages. These are changes that life must endure or perish. And above all of these is time. The longer a species or civilization exists, the more chances there are for catastrophe. The universe does not need to hurry. It waits, and in its waiting, it tests. But not all threats come from outside. Intelligence itself carries danger. To build tools is to gain power. To gain power is to risk misusing it. Fire warms, but it burns. Energy fuels, but it pollutes. Technology expands possibility, but also vulnerability. A mind that reflects can also destroy. You pause with this. Intelligence is both gift and weight. It allows survival in ways no other species can match, but it also opens paths to extinction unique to itself. A civilization may collapse not because of what surrounds it, but because of what it creates. And so the question deepens. If the first intelligence in the universe arose long before you, could it have survived? Or did fragility claim it as fragility claims so much? You drift into the image of balance. Civilization is like a flame. Too little fuel, and it dies. Too much chaos, and it burns out of control. To survive, it must be tended carefully, shielded from winds, fed in rhythm. Perhaps the first intelligence learned this. Perhaps it did not. You hold in mind the idea of resilience. On Earth, resilience is what allowed life to continue even after devastation. Tiny forms, hidden in soil or deep water, endured when larger, more complex beings vanished. Perhaps civilizations, too, must find their own forms of resilience, ways of lasting not through dominance, but through adaptation. Yet even resilience has limits. You breathe with this awareness. Survival is rare, so rare that your own presence, your own thought in this moment, is extraordinary. Out of billions of years, out of countless extinctions, one fragile branch has carried you here. It humbles you, and it deepens the mystery of the first intelligence. If it was born elsewhere, long before Earth's story began, what were its chances of lasting? Did it endure the tests of time? Did it adapt, or did it vanish like so many species before it? You do not know. You cannot know. The silence of the stars does not reveal their stories, but you can feel the thinness of survival, the narrow thread that holds a mind in existence. You can feel the closeness of silence, waiting always just beyond extinction. Is not failure. It is part of the rhythm of life, part of the universe's way of moving forward. What is rare is continuity, the long thread unbroken. That is what makes intelligence, any intelligence, so precious. It is a flame flickering in vast dark, fragile but radiant. You return to your breath, in and out, presence and pause, existence and silence. You see how they mirror each other. One cannot be without the other. Survival is meaningful because it is not guaranteed. And so, when you think of the first civilization, you hold both possibilities at once. It may still endure, a flame carefully tended across the ages, or it may have gone dark, leaving only silence, only absence. Both are possible. Both are real. The universe does not choose between them. It allows both stories to unfold. You let the thoughts settle into stillness. Civilizations, like stars, are temporary. They shine, they burn, they fade. Some burn longer, some shorter, but none forever. Survival is a question of time, of chance, of balance, and yet the possibility remains that somewhere, somehow, the first intelligence found its way through fragility, that it still breathes, still reflects, still endures. You do not know, but the question itself is enough to rest inside. You let it rest with you now, soft and unresolved. You drift into the thought of distance. Even here, on your own planet, distance shapes everything. A horizon limits what you see. A mountain separates valleys. An ocean divides shores. To cross them takes effort, time, and connection. Yet on Earth, distances can always be overcome, given enough will and patience. In space, distance is something else. It is not simply separation. It is immensity. It is the unyielding expanse that stretches farther than thought can comfortably hold. You rest in that immensity now. The universe is not empty, but it is spacious beyond measure. Stars burn everywhere, yet they are scattered like islands in a black sea. To the eye, they seem close, points of light clustered in constellations, but each point is far, impossibly far. Even the nearest star beyond your sun is more than 4 light years away. That is, 4 years of travel for light itself, which moves faster than anything else in the cosmos. For you, and for any intelligence bound to a planet, such distances create a quiet isolation. You may look, you may listen, but to reach is almost impossible. The cosmic ocean is too wide. You pause with this realization, letting it sink in. The first intelligence, wherever it was, must have felt the same. To look up and see countless suns, to wonder what worlds might orbit them, and yet to know that they are too far for touch. The sea divides not by lack of possibility, but by sheer scale. You reflect on scale now. Earth is vast to you when you walk across it. A journey from one continent to another feels enormous. But compared to space, Earth is a pebble, a grain of sand in a desert without end. The solar system itself, with its planets, moons, and wandering comets, is a mere pocket, a small harbor along the edge of a far larger sea, and even the galaxy, with its hundreds of billions of stars, is just one island among many. Beyond it lie other galaxies, more numerous than stars in the sky. You breathe with this awareness. To survive, a civilization must not only endure the rhythms of its planet, but also learn to live within them. To ignore them is to risk collapse. You drift now into the thought of other worlds. Some planets are too unstable, their climates swinging wildly. Some lack protective fields, leaving them exposed to radiation. Some orbit stars that flare violently, stripping away their skies. These are places where civilizations might never begin. But there may also be worlds where civilizations did rise, only to find that their home shifted beneath them. Imagine not as a scene, but as a quiet possibility, a planet slowly losing its water to space, or a star growing hotter, changing a mild climate into a furnace. A civilization might have thrived once, but as the shell cracked, it could not hold on. Time and planet together closed its story. You rest gently with this idea. It is not despair, but reflection, for even in loss there is learning. To see fragility is to appreciate resilience more deeply. Earth too has endured. Despite its many changes, it has carried life for nearly 4 billion years. Civilizations rise within its balance. That, in itself, is astonishing. But you cannot escape the question: did the first intelligence lose its home? Did fragility claim it, as it has claimed so many species on Earth? Did it vanish, not because it lacked thought, but because its world shifted beyond recovery? You do not know, you cannot know, and yet, the possibility lingers in you like a soft echo. You close your eyes to feel the thinness of it all, the atmosphere above you, the soil beneath you, the balance of warmth and water that allows you to breathe, to rest, to wonder. It is not guaranteed. It is not eternal. It is fragile. And fragility is part of what makes it precious. Worlds can hold life, but they can also break it. This truth hums in the background of the universe, shaping every chance of intelligence, every hope of survival. And in the silence that follows, you feel gratitude that your own fragile shell still holds. You breathe into that gratitude, letting it slow you, letting it carry you toward rest. You begin with the thought of scale. Your body is small compared to a planet small compared to a star, and a star small compared to a galaxy. Yet in the quiet of thought, scale can be bridged. You can imagine standing beside a mountain, and then beside a world, and then beside a sun, even though no body could contain such comparisons. Thought is the only vessel vast enough, And with thought comes wonder. What might civilizations become if they grew so large that even stars could be shaped by their hands? Could intelligence reach a stage where it was not only a questioner of the cosmos, but also a gardener of it? You pause in this possibility, letting it expand slowly across your mind. On Earth, gardens are shaped places, natural growth guided by intention, flowers placed in patterns, trees pruned to flourish, paths arranged to bring both beauty and function. A gardener works with life, not against it, shaping rather than destroying. Perhaps, on a larger scale, civilizations might one day treat stars as gardens, tending them with patience across cosmic time. You reflect on the first step toward such imagining energy. Civilizations require it. Every tool, every structure, every comfort is built upon energy drawn from For humanity, the scale of energy has grown with time. Firewood to coal, coal to oil, oil to nuclear, nuclear to the possibility of stars themselves. The ultimate source of nearly all energy on Earth is sunlight, flowing across space from the nearest star. To imagine a civilization that grows beyond planetary fragility is to imagine one that learns to gather its star's light in fuller ways. You let this lead you to Dyson spheres, not a single sphere, solid and seamless, but swarms of collectors orbiting a star, capturing its power. Such a structure would dim the star's visible light while releasing infrared heat, a signature that telescopes might one day detect. A Dyson swarm is not simply engineering. It is a civilization's declaration that it has reached beyond survival, beyond fragility, into a new stage of growth. Would the first intelligence, if it endured long enough, have built such things? Would it have sculpted the glow of its star, changing how it looked to distant observers? You cannot know, but the possibility is soothing, a reminder that minds, like seeds, may grow into vast forms when given enough time. You drift further into reflection, star lifting, the gentle reshaping of a star's mass to extend its life, to guide its brightness, to ensure stability. Civilizations that live not just for centuries or millennia, but for millions of years, might begin to see stars not as fixed, but as living companions whose lives can be nurtured. Just as gardeners extend the life of trees, pruning and tending, so too might civilizations tend to suns. You breathe into this thought, slow and deep. It glows with quiet awe. To imagine a civilization not fearing its star's death, but guiding it, is to imagine intelligence on scales almost beyond comprehension, and yet it is not forbidden by nature. It is permitted by physics, by engineering, by patience. The only question is whether any mind has ever reached such a height. You rest in the idea of engineered suns. Civilizations may move stars, arranging them into patterns, reshaping galaxies. It is difficult to picture, but galaxies themselves are already patterns, spirals, ellipses, irregular clusters. What would it mean for intelligence to shape those patterns intentionally, to create cosmic architecture visible across millions of light years? Perhaps the universe already holds such designs. Perhaps you have not yet learned how to recognize them. A pattern in starlight that is too precise, too deliberate, too unlikely to be natural. It may be waiting, hidden in the sky, like a garden, so large you can only see fragments of its paths. You pause to let this image settle into you. The thought of civilizations as gardeners of stars is not about certainty. It is about awe. To hold the possibility that minds can grow into cosmic architects is to feel both small and vast at once. You reflect again on the first intelligence. If it existed, if it endured, did it reach this stage? Did it rise beyond the fragility of its planet, beyond the silence of distance, into the vast power of stars themselves? If so, it may have left traces that still shine, relics not of extinction but of creation, the hum of waste heat, the dimming of a star, the reshaping of light across a galaxy, fossils of achievement, not of ruin. You cannot know, but you can rest in the possibility, for possibility itself is a kind of comfort. It reminds you that growth is not limited to what you see now. It reminds you that the arc of intelligence may be long, and that even if your own species is fragile, the universe may already have seen others flourish. You let this fill you with calmness. The gardeners of stars, if they exist, are not loud. They do not announce themselves with words. Their language is structure, energy, light. It is a quiet language, but a lasting one. A garden is not loud, but its presence endures. So too might cosmic gardens endure, waiting for those who learn how to notice. You breathe slowly. You let the thought become gentle, meditative. Sleep dash like dot stars as gardens, civilizations as gardeners, time as soil, light as growth. Perhaps the universe is already full of such gardens. Perhaps they are rare. Perhaps they are common. You do not need to know. You only need to feel the wonder of the possibility, to let it soften you, to let it carry you into stillness. For the measure of intelligence is not only in survival, it is also in creation, in shaping, in care. To imagine civilizations as gardeners is to imagine a future that is not about conquest, but about harmony, not about destruction, but about tending. You close your eyes gently. The stars above you remain patient, enduring. Some may already be gardens. Some may yet become them. You are part of that same unfolding story. And as you rest, you wonder quietly, if civilizations can sculpt light, what happens when they choose not to shape, but to whisper, to send soft signals hidden in the silence itself? You begin with a pause. Silence is not always what it seems. To the ear, it is absence, but to the mind, silence is space. Space where the faintest whispers may hide. What feels empty may only be quiet. What seems still may only be subtle. You rest in this thought. Not all signals are loud. Some live in patterns so gentle they escape notice. Some pass through you without sound, without light, without disturbance, like wind moving across a still pond. Perhaps the first intelligence, if it spoke, chose to speak this way, not with shouts across the cosmos, but with whispers. Whispers so soft you may not yet know how to hear them. You drift now into the thought of radio waves. Humanity first learned to send voices through invisible fields less than 2 centuries ago. From towers and wires, signals spread outward, carrying words, music, numbers. Most of those signals were not meant for the stars, but they traveled there anyway. Some still expand in spheres around Earth, faint but persistent. If another civilization also discovered radio, its own signals might be moving across space, blending into the cosmic static. But space is not empty. Stars crackle, pulsars tick, galaxies hum with background radiation. To listen is not easy. The sky is full of noise, and whispers vanish easily inside it. You let this realization settle gently. Perhaps the whispers are already here, but you cannot yet separate them from the chorus of the cosmos. You move to neutrinos, particles so small, so elusive, that trillions pass through your body every second without leaving a trace. They barely interact with matter. They are ghosts of. Each one is distant. Each one is moving farther away as the universe expands. Distance is not only wide, it is growing. The sea is not calm. It stretches, it widens, it pushes islands farther and farther apart. You breathe with the weight of this. The first intelligence may have been real, may even still exist, but distance itself could keep you forever apart. Light is the messenger, but light travels slowly across these scales. What you see is always the past, a star as it was decades, centuries, even millions of years ago. To see the universe is to look backward. To listen is to wait. You consider what this means for communication. If the first intelligence sent a signal, it may still be traveling. It may pass Earth long after you are gone, long after your species is gone. Or perhaps it already passed, millions of years before you were. Here to notice, signals, like bottles tossed into waves, may drift forever without reaching their intended shore. This is the barrier of scale. Not silence, but separation. Not absence, but delay. You reflect gently on how this shapes the possibility of meeting. Two civilizations may exist at the same time, yet never know each other because light cannot move quickly enough to bridge the gap. By the time one voice reaches the other, centuries or millennia may have passed. Messages arrive late. Answers arrive later still. You feel how lonely this is. Not because you are alone, but because even if you are not, distance makes it seem that way. And yet, there is beauty in this loneliness. The cosmic ocean is vast, but it also holds wonder. Every star you see is a reminder that there are other islands, other possible homes, other places where minds may have opened to the same question. Distance does not erase possibility, it simply slows it. You think of explorers at sea. For much of human history, oceans too seemed endless. Shores, unseen, felt unreachable. To set sail was to risk never returning. But eventually, crossing became possible. Ships grew stronger, knowledge deeper, horizons expanded. Perhaps the same may one day be true of stars. Perhaps distance, though immense, is not an eternal barrier. Perhaps it is only a challenge awaiting. Patience. Still, you return to now. For now, the stars are far. The first intelligence, if it exists, remains separated by expanses beyond reach. This ocean holds you in place, quiet, reflective, aware of your smallness. But smallness is not failure. It is perspective. You let that perspective soothe you. You are part of something vast, even if you cannot cross it. You are part of a sea, whose scale humbles but also comforts. For in such a sea, even the smallest island carries meaning. Even your own thoughts ripple into the dark, carried outward as faint signals, forever expanding. Perhaps, someday, someone will listen. You rest. In that possibility, allowing it to drift across your mind like a gentle tide. The cosmic ocean is wide, too wide for easy crossing. But in its vastness, it holds the quiet hope that voices may still meet. You rest with the thought that light is never wasted. Every photon that leaves a star, every flicker from a flame, every pulse from a distant galaxy continues its journey, moving outward into space without end. It does not turn back. It does not stop. It travels, carrying with it a memory of its source. This is the language of light, even before life began. the universe was already full of it. Radiation from the first stars poured outward, writing brightness into the dark. Later, galaxies filled with their steady glow, patterns of rhythm and intensity. To look into the night sky now is to read a story written in photons that have crossed unthinkable distances. Each one that reaches your eyes tonight may have begun its journey millions of years ago. And so you begin to wonder if the universe holds the memories of stars. Could it also hold the memories of minds? Every civilization leaves signals, some intentional, others not. A fire glowing on a hillside, a spark in the atmosphere, the hiss of a radio wave. These are not only tools of communication, but also footprints. They slip outward, beyond their world, into space. You follow the thought gently, letting it unfold. When humanity first discovered radio, the signals were not sent to the stars. They were local, meant for ships, for news, for voices across short distances. But radio waves do not stop at the edges of atmosphere. They pass through. They escape. They join the outward tide of light. This means that the first broadcasts of your species, the earliest crackling voices, the first music ever carried by radio, are already drifting into the galaxy. They are faint now, so faint they would be difficult to detect, but they are there. They expand in a sphere around Earth, growing larger with every passing year. Anyone listening within that sphere would hear not silence, but fragments of your story. And if that is true here, it could be true elsewhere. The first intelligence, wherever it arose, may also have left such traces, perhaps unintentionally, perhaps long ago. If so, those photons, those waves, would still be traveling. They may already have passed you, or they may still be on there. Light is both fragile and enduring. A signal weakens as it spreads, like ripples fading on water. But in space, there is little to scatter it. A whisper can carry astonishingly far if given enough time. You pause here, letting the image linger. The galaxy as a vast sea of ripples, signals expanding, intersecting, crossing paths. The language of light weaving through darkness, layered and complex. But what would such a message look like? Some might be accidental, like your earliest broadcasts, waste signals, leaks of technology, noise that nonetheless carries information. Others might be deliberate, structured, designed to be recognized. Patterns of mathematics, pulses that repeat, signals built in such a way that no natural source could explain them. Humanity has tried. This too, sending messages outward, simple and symbolic. Diagrams of molecules, maps of solar systems, music encoded into golden records, carried by spacecraft drifting beyond the edge of planets. You imagine the first intelligence might have done something similar. Perhaps it sent signals not to communicate, but simply to announce, "We are here." Perhaps it sought not conversation, but remembrance to be known across time, even if no reply would ever come. There is a deep tenderness in that thought. The idea of a civilization reaching out, not knowing if anyone is listening, yet choosing to send its voice into the dark anyway. You reflect on how light carries memory. The photons leaving your sun today will travel forever. Long after Earth is gone, they will still exist, still racing outward. To follow them is to follow history itself. Even now, telescopes gather the light of galaxies as they were billions of years ago. You never see the present in the stars. You see their past. In this way, light preserves, records, and delivers. So what of the first intelligence? If it existed, its light may still be traveling. Its signals may still be crossing space, waiting for someone with the patience to notice. Perhaps they are faint, hidden in the static of the cosmos. Perhaps they are disguised, embedded in the natural hum of radiation. Or perhaps they are clear, but arriving too slowly, stretched by distance, waiting for recognition that has not yet come. You breathe into the stillness of this. You realize how easily such signals could be missed. To find them requires not only sensitivity, but understanding. A message is only a message if it can be read. Otherwise, it is only noise. And so you drift into the thought of buried meaning. What if the sky is already full of messages? What if the first intelligence spoke and continues to speak, but you do not yet know the language? The possibility is both humbling and soothing. The universe may be less silent than it seems. You think of pulsars, stars that emit beams of radio waves in precise rhythms. When first discovered, they seemed artificial. The pulses were so regular, so exact, that some thought they must be signals. They were not, they were natural. But in their discovery, you see the challenge, to distinguish what is mind-made from what is star-born. The line is delicate, the task immense. Still, you feel the pull of wonder, because even if the first signals are faint, even if they are hidden, they are possible, and possibility itself is enough to keep you listening. Light is not limited to radio. Civilizations may shape it in many forms. Visible light, laser pulses, infrared heat, ultraviolet bursts. Any of these could carry intention. Any could carry meaning. The cosmos is wide enough to host infinite ways of speaking. You linger on the thought of photons themselves, tiny particles, yet tireless travelers. They do not age. They do not rest. They move at the universe's speed limit, carrying with them information from their origin. Each one that brushes your eye tonight has been faithful to its journey across unimaginable gulfs. Each one is a messenger. And if even starlight is a messenger, how much more could the light of civilizations be? You breathe slowly, letting your body soften with the rhythm of this thought. Messages buried in starlight, waiting to be found, waiting to be understood. Perhaps the first intelligence spoke, not once, but often. Perhaps its language of light still crosses the void. Perhaps even now it drifts over you without recognition. You do not need to know. You only need to feel the vastness of the possibility. You rest in it, like a current carrying you towards sleep. Light is everywhere. It is the most ancient traveler. It is the language of stars, and it may also be the language of minds. You close your eyes gently, and you listen, not with ears, but with presence. You listen to the universe as though it may be speaking, as though every photon could be a word, a fragment, a trace, a trace. Each possibility softens into another. None resolves the paradox, yet each deepens it. You pause with your breath. Inhale, exhale, presence and silence. You realize that silence is not absence. It is space. It is openness. It is the backdrop against which discovery can happen. If the universe were loud with voices, mystery would be diminished. But in its quiet possibility lingers. You rest in that possibility. The paradox does not need to be solved to be meaningful. Its power lies in the question itself, in the way it expands your mind, stretches your perspective. To ask, where is everyone, is also to ask, what does it mean to be here? You feel your own existence in this question, against the immensity of stars. Your thoughts are improbable, fragile, and yet they are real. If you are here, then perhaps others have been, or are, or will be. Loneliness may be temporary, or it may be illusion. For even in silence, you are not entirely alone. You are part of a universe that has produced you. You are not separate from it. You are an expression of it. The atoms in your body come from stars. The breath you take is tied to cycles older than civilization itself. In this way, the cosmos speaks through you. You drift deeper into stillness. The paradox continues to hum in the background, unresolved but gentle. You do not need to chase an answer. The desert of silence may stretch far, but it is not empty. It is full of waiting, of possibility, of the soft chance that somewhere, someone else also wonders, also listens. You let yourself imagine that they do, not as a certainty, not as a promise, but as a possibility, a civilization far away, under different skies, asking the same question, where is everyone? In this way, loneliness becomes shared, and shared loneliness is a kind of connection. The paradox, then, is not only about absence, it is also about reflection. To wonder about others is to see yourself more clearly. To notice the silence is to notice your own voice within it. You breathe slowly, softly, letting this comfort you. The measure of loneliness is not despair. It is awareness. It is knowing the scale of the cosmos, feeling the distance, and still choosing to wonder. And as long as you wonder, you are not truly alone. You rest in the thought of time, not the kind of time you measure in hours or days, not even the kind you count in years. This is deeper, older, vaster, the kind of time that belongs to galaxies and stars, to the slow breathing of the universe itself. Against such a scale, your own life feels like a blink, a ripple on the surface of something endless, and yet, it is within this endlessness that intelligence must rise. It is within this endlessness that civilizations either endure or disappear. You pause with this thought. Perhaps the first intelligence lived too early. Perhaps it appeared when the universe was still young, when galaxies had just begun to settle, when stars burned hotter and faster, when planets formed in violent instability. It may have lived, thrived, even wondered at the sky, and then faded long before Earth itself was born. If that is true, then time itself has hidden them from you. No trace of their presence could survive across billions of years. No signals would endure, no structures remain. Time erases as faithfully as it creates. You consider the scales involved. Galaxies themselves live for tens of billions of years. Stars for millions to trillions. Civilizations, if they rise, are brief in comparison. A few thousand years, perhaps tens of thousands, perhaps more. But even if they lasted 1,000,000 years, that span would still be short against the age of the cosmos. The chance that two civilizations overlap, alive at the same time, aware of each other, becomes small. You breathe into this realization. The silence you feel may not be silence at all, but simply misalignment. Others may have come and gone. Entire histories played out, while your world was still only dust and stone. You reflect on patience. The universe is not in a hurry. Stars form, shine, and die in rhythms too slow for you to follow directly. Planets orbit with steady precision, measured in millions of cycles. Even galaxies drift apart with movements so gradual that they seem motionless to you. Against this, patience. Civilizations appear like sparks, brief flashes of awareness that flare and vanish before the night changes. You let yourself feel both the beauty and the sorrow in this. To know that others may have existed, but in times so distant that you will never meet them, is both comforting and lonely. Comforting because intelligence may not be unique, lonely because you will never share a moment with them. You rest with the thought of eras. If the age of the universe were a single calendar year, with the Big Bang at January's dawn and the present moment as December's final breath, human civilization would appear in only the last fraction of the last second. All of history compressed into a blink. The first intelligence, if it arose earlier, might belong to an entirely different month on that cosmic calendar, one you can never return to. And yet, you realize this does not make them meaningless. Fossils in time, if they exist, are reminders that intelligence is possible, that the universe can produce awareness more than once. Even if those minds are gone, their presence may echo in the very fact that you now exist to wonder about them. You pause again, letting the rhythm of your breath mirror the rhythm of thought. Time, as the enemy, is not cruel. It is simply impartial. It does not work against intelligence intentionally. It simply moves, carrying everything forward, washing away what cannot endure. Civilizations may resist for a while, building, remembering, passing on their knowledge. But eventually, time wears all things down. You let that truth soften you. There is no failure in this. There is only the rhythm of existence. Perhaps, then, the measure of intelligence is not how long it lasts, but that it appears at all. Even if the first minds are gone, their spark was part of the great unfolding, and their presence once filled silence with thought. That, too, is a kind of victory. Over emptiness, you return to the present, feeling the smallness of now within the vastness of then. You understand that to exist at all, in this thin slice of time, is extraordinary, and still, the question remains: if time is the enemy, is it also the gatekeeper? Must intelligence not only arise, but arise at the right time, in the right place, to be known? And if so, what does that mean for your own civilization? How long do you have before time turns its patience on you as well? You let the thought remain open, unresolved. Time is vast. Minds are brief. And somewhere between the two, the universe carries both silence and wonder. You begin with a simple truth. Life does not float in emptiness. It requires a surface, an atmosphere, a balance of warmth and cold, a place where chemistry can unfold into complexity. Life clings to worlds, and worlds are fragile. They are shells in space, thin as glass compared to the vastness around them, vulnerable to change, to accident, to time. You rest in this thought, letting it settle like dust on water. Earth itself reminds you how delicate such a shell can be. Its atmosphere is only a thin veil, a skin of gases wrapped around rock and ocean. If Earth were the size of a classroom globe, the atmosphere would be no thicker than a coat of paint. That thin layer holds heat, shapes climate, carries air for breath. It is enough to cradle life, but only just enough. You reflect on how finely tuned survival must be. Too close to a star, and oceans boil away. Too far, and they freeze. Too much carbon in the air, and heat is trapped. Too little, and warmth escapes. Too weak, a magnetic field, and radiation strips away the sky. A planet is not simply a home. It is a balancing act, an equilibrium that can tilt with ease. You breathe slowly, recognizing how easily the cradle of life can become its grave. Perhaps the first civilization knew this. Perhaps it rose on a world with its own delicate shell, one that seemed stable until change arrived. A shift in orbit, a star's brightening, a volcanic flood. an ice age deepening. Any of these could transform a fertile planet into a barren one. You pause with the thought of atmospheres. On Earth, the air has not always been kind. Billions of years ago, oxygen was rare, and its arrival was toxic to the life that came before. Later, ice covered the globe almost entirely. Still later, warming and cooling cycles reshaped climates, forcing species to adapt or vanish. If Earth itself has changed so often, then other planets too must change. Civilizations that depend on them must learn to endure, or they will be undone. You linger on the fragility of climate. A planet's temperature depends on many threads. Woven together, the brightness of its star, the tilt of its axis, the swirl of its oceans, the breath of its volcanoes, the gases drifting in its sky. Pull one thread, and the pattern changes. Too much change, and life cannot hold on. Perhaps the first intelligence lived through such a shift. Perhaps it watched its seas dry, or its fields freeze, or its skies turn hostile. Perhaps it adapted. For a while, building, struggling, resisting, and perhaps, in the end, its planet moved beyond what even intelligence could overcome. You rest with this uncertainty, letting it rock you like a tide. Planets are both cradles and graves. They nurture, but they also demand. They give life, but they do not promise to keep it. Even Earth, generous as it has been, carries its own dangers. Asteroids cross its path, volcanoes reshape its air, ice sheets advance and retreat, and now, humanity itself changes the atmosphere, tilting the balance with choices that ripple outward. Fragility is not only imposed from without, it can be amplified from within, and you drift, wondering softly what other kinds of traces might be left behind, not in signals, but in the very structures of the universe itself. You drift into the thought of memory, not your own memory, but the memory that the universe keeps. Earth itself remembers in layers of rock, in patterns of fossilized shells, in bones pressed into stone. Even after life is gone, its shapes linger, captured by time's slow hands. The universe, too, may hold its fossils, not bones, not shells, but traces of civilization's marks left behind, not in biology, but in technology, in energy, in altered chemistry. These traces are called technosignatures, and they are like the whispers of presence, carried forward long after the voices themselves are silent. You rest in the stillness of this idea that the first intelligence, if it existed, may still be here, not in its living form, but in what it left behind. You begin with waste heat. Every civilization that uses energy must release it. To power machines, to light cities, to drive engines. Energy flows in, but some of it always flows out again as heat. There is no way to avoid this. It is a law of nature, as fundamental as breathing. If a civilization were vast enough, if it used more energy than the stars around it, this waste heat might glow faintly across space. Telescopes could search for it, like looking for a subtle ember in the dark. You linger with this thought. Waste heat as fossil, an unintentional signature of existence. Even if the civilization is gone, the changes it made might remain detectable for a long time. Then you move to larger possibilities. Some have imagined structures so immense they would surround entire stars, Dyson spheres, vast shells, or swarms of machines capturing all of a star's light. Such a structure would change how the star appears to others. It would block some wavelengths, release others. Its presence would be visible in the star's altered glow, like a fingerprint pressed into light. This, too, would be a kind of fossil, not a relic of stone, but of starlight. You let this image expand gently in your mind, a civilization so advanced it reshaped its home star, and yet, even if it vanished, the shape might linger, waiting for someone else to notice. You think also of atmospheres. On Earth, human industry has left chemical marks in the air: carbon, methane, chlorofluorocarbons. These are small changes compared to the age of the planet, but they are distinctive. If another civilization altered its own atmosphere, that alteration could last. It might be visible across light years as a subtle imbalance, as molecules that would not be there without technology, chemical scars, you'd think. Fossils written not in stone, but in air. You drift further. Civilizations may also leave scars on planets themselves. Mining, building, reshaping landscapes, these might remain for millions of years. If Earth were abandoned long after humans were gone, satellites would fall, cities would crumble, but some marks would linger: quarries, tunnels, artificial isotopes, evidence carved into geology. And so you reflect. The first intelligence might be long extinct, but its traces could still hum in the background of the cosmos, waiting to be found. You pause here, breathing into the possibility. Fossils in time do not speak loudly. They whisper. They require patience, sensitivity, and interpretation. On Earth, paleontologists spend lifetimes studying fragments of bone, half-buried impressions, tiny patterns in stone, to search for fossils. Of civilizations is to expand that practice to the stars themselves. You realize that this search is not about certainty. It is about openness, the willingness to consider that what looks like noise might, in fact, be signal. That what seems like natural variation might, in truth, be memory. You feel the calm weight of this realization. If the first intelligence left fossils, you may already be surrounded by them. The unusual dimming of a star, the unexpected warmth of a planet, the imbalance in a spectrum of light. Each of these could be a hint, a fragment. But just as with fossils and stone, interpretation is delicate. To mistake a natural formation for a bone, or a bone for a rock, is easy. The same is true of cosmic fossils. They blur with the background of stars, galaxies, and natural processes. Still, the possibility is soothing, because it means that the first intelligence may not be lost entirely, even if its voice is gone. Even if its presence has faded, something of it may still exist, carried forward in time, accessible across the dark. You let this soften you, the idea that nothing is truly erased, that even civilizations may leave shadows behind, echoes that last longer than their own lifetimes. You think of Earth again. Dinosaurs are gone, yet their bones remain. Trees of ancient forests are long vanished, yet coal carries their memory. Entire oceans have risen and fallen, yet their imprints can be read in stone. If Earth can keep memory across such time, perhaps the universe does the same. This brings you comfort, because it means that the first intelligence, whether alive or gone, still has a presence. Its fossils may be subtle, scattered, but they are part of the cosmic record. You pause, letting your breath deepen. You sink into the slow rhythm of patience, the rhythm of searching. Perhaps one day, telescopes will uncover a signal hidden in heat. Perhaps they will notice a star dimmed in a way no natural dust could explain. Perhaps they will find molecules in a planet's air that speak not of biology alone, but of technology. When that day comes, it will not be the discovery of life itself, but of its fossils, ancient, silent, yet filled with meaning. You rest in this thought. The universe may be a museum without walls, its relics scattered across the dark, waiting to be seen. And you realize that fossils are not only about the past, they are also about continuity. To know that something lived before you is to feel less alone. To know that civilizations may leave traces is to imagine that yours too might endure in some form. Even if voices fall silent, the evidence of existence can remain. You close your eyes on this possibility, letting it cradle you. The quiet persistence of evidence, humming across time, written in starlight, in heat, in chemistry, that the fossils of intelligence may not speak, but they do not vanish. They linger, patient, waiting, and in that patience, you feel a calmness settle into you. The calmness of knowing that nothing is truly lost, only transformed. You begin with a contradiction. The universe is vast, older than your imagination, can hold, filled with stars beyond counting, planets beyond measure. By numbers alone, the chances of life elsewhere should be high. The chances of intelligence should be reasonable. The chances of civilizations, perhaps even many, should feel almost inevitable. And yet, when you listen, there is silence. This silence is called the Fermi paradox. Though the name matters less than the feeling it describes, it is the tension between expectation and experience, between probability and emptiness, between the math that suggests abundance and the quiet that delivers none. You rest in this paradox now. On one side, the universe whispers of plenty. Astronomers have found planets around most stars they study. Many of those planets are rocky. Many sit in habitable zones where liquid water could exist. The raw ingredients of life are everywhere: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, water, ice, organic molecules. These are not rare. They are abundant. And if the ingredients are abundant, why should the recipe not repeat? Why should Earth be the only kitchen in which the cosmos tried? But on the other side, you feel the emptiness. You look into the sky and see countless stars, but you do not see the glow of alien cities. You do not hear the hum of alien signals. Telescopes scan, radios listen, but the results remain the same. Silence stretching outward like an endless desert. The paradox presses gently on your thoughts. Where is everyone? You linger with this question, not rushing to answer. It is not a puzzle to be solved tonight, but a space to be felt. Loneliness in the cosmos is not like human loneliness. It is not simply absence of company. It is the sense of being surrounded by immensity and yet hearing nothing back. Like standing on the shore of a vast ocean, calling out, and hearing only the echo of your own voice. You let that image settle. Into you, the ocean is wide. The stars are many. The silence, however, is deeper. There are possibilities for this silence. You think of them slowly, one by one. Perhaps civilizations are rare. The conditions for life may be common, but the path to intelligence may be fragile. Life may begin often, but it may not often cross the threshold into minds that wonder, into civilizations that build. Or perhaps civilizations do arise, but they do not last. Extinction shadows every spark. Civilizations may flare briefly and then vanish, leaving no trace strong enough to endure. They may rise and fall so quickly that the chance of overlap is slim. One ends before another begins, or perhaps they last, but they are quiet. They may not wish to speak. or may not think to send signals in the ways you expect. Their communication might be too subtle, too alien, too different to recognize. What you call silence may simply be your own inability to listen in the right language, and then there is distance. The cosmic ocean is wide. Even if voices exist, they may be so far that their signals cannot yet reach you. Or perhaps they passed you long ago, in eras before your kind was here to hear.